Hello and welcome to AutoTrader Carology Talks, where we chat with automotive industry experts on the latest trends, data, and insights in a longer format to provide you with even more valuable takeaways. I'm your host, Sabrina Bond from AutoTrader, and today I'm joined by Bear Jakurik, our Vice President of Insights and Intelligence, to chat about electric vehicles, or EVs. Every year, we conduct a study with car shoppers on autotrader.ca to understand EV purchase intentions, the drivers and barriers behind consumer decisions to purchase an EV, as well as the level of education and information Canadians are exposed to with regard to EVs. Today, we'll deep dive the results of this study, examining and discussing how the needle has moved since we first conducted this body of research in 2022. Thank you for joining me today, Barish.
Thanks for having me, Sabrina. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so let's kick it off. Can you share a little bit about what Canadian interest in EVs looks like and how is that compared to previous years?
Yeah, so as you alluded to in the beginning of the podcast, this is the third year that we are running this. And in 2022, so one of the key questions that we ask consumers is that whether they would consider buying an EV as their next purchase. And the number was 68% in 2022, came down to 56% in 2023. And in 2024, we were looking at 46%. So the interest in purchasing one has been on the decline.
So what are some of the factors that deter consumers from wanting to purchase an EV, and has that changed much from year to year?
Yeah, it hasn't changed much year to year, but the concerns are generally the same. The range anxiety is a big one. Consumers, 79% of the consumers stated that they're concerned about range anxiety. They're anxious about the range, which I kind of understand.
Yeah.
And the second one was lack of charging station availability at 72%. And thirdly, which is probably not surprising, is the higher purchase costs.
Yeah.
So given what's happening in Canada, financially speaking, Canadians are a bit more sensitive as to, what they buy and when they buy it. And given that, interest rates are high, inflation is on the has been coming down, but still on the higher side compared to historical norms. I understand that the purchase cost is one of the main concerns for consumers. So one thing, what we wanted to do is we wanted to understand the differences in prices between ICE and EVs. So the analytics team did this analysis, and what we did was we found vehicles that have both ICE and EV versions, and it obviously differs based on the make and model, but generally speaking, high level, the difference is around 15 to 20%.
Okay.
Obviously, EVs being on the higher side.
Yeah.
So again, going back to what I was telling you about the, situation in Canada and globally for that matter, financially, it's valid that consumers are concerned about these higher costs for EVs.
So dealers that are looking to sell more EVs would probably want to educate consumers on those factors like charging station options and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. So one of the things that, when we ask consumers about the used EVs, one thing keeps coming up is the batteries. They want to learn more about batteries, charging availability. Replacement cost. If something happens to my battery, how can I replace it? How much would it cost? So in general, there's a theme around battery and information around
educating them on it.
Yeah, exactly.
So do consumers have interest in certain types of EVs?
So remember we talked about the fact that 46% of the consumers are interested in buying an EV, and we looked at within that 46%, what kind of EV they would be interested in. So the data is not very surprising. Okay. So the interest in hybrids has been going up, both for plug-in hybrids and non-plug-in hybrids.
Okay.
They're up by around 10% compared to last year. 52%. It was 52% last year and went up to 62% for regular hybrids, and plug-in hybrids up again from 54% to 60%. And what's not too surprising is that battery electric vehicle interest has come down. So it was 53% last year, and now it's 50%. So it seems like consumers are wanting to buy plugins, kind of best of the both worlds. And this is my personal opinion. And, we were talking about the research, but this resonates really well with me, Sabrina, because like these are the type of conversations that we have in the family.
Yeah.
And my wife is interested in owning an EV, and we're going back and forth between what type of EV, when, and all that stuff. So the research results is they resonate with me.
Yeah.
And in fact, even between when we were having these conversations, I use the results from the research just to make my points a little bit stronger.
Yeah, no, for sure, I would too. Okay, so what about when it comes to availability? Or is there a lot of EVs on the market?
Availability has been improving, which is probably not too surprising, right? Given the mandates that we have in the next several years, we need to hit these goals, targets. And how do we do that? We need to sell more. And how do we sell more? We need to produce more.
Yeah.
So looking at autotrader.ca, the inventory for EVs, both for EVs and battery electric vehicles, as well as plug-in hybrids, they're up by quite a bit. So combine everything together, EVs, battery electric EVs plus hybrids, new and used together, we have over 42,000 cars as of last week.
Okay.
So, and compared to last year, this is almost 2x. So the supply is abundant at this point.
So I know you touched on this briefly, but what does EV pricing look like? Have there been any fluctuations there?
Yes, EV prices, good news for the consumers. They're coming down by quite a bit. Yeah. So overall, from the last conversation that we had, that vehicle prices in general, they have been declining. So looking at April data, and I'm talking about the overall numbers here, used car prices are down by 6% on a year-over-year basis.
Okay.
But when we looked at EV prices, and when I say EVs, I'm talking about battery electric vehicles in this instance, they are down by 18.4%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. So the average price of a used battery electric vehicle is just over $48,000. Which is, again, 18.4% decline. So, you asked me about the demand. Demand is coming down. Supply is increasing because we have all these targets. And what's happening to prices? Prices are responding accordingly.
Yeah. So what is the consumer perception of the 2035 ZEV mandate that Canada has to have all new light-duty vehicles be zero emissions by 2035?
Yeah, so the good news is that the awareness is there.
Okay.
So based on the consumers that we reached out to, 78% of them said that, we are aware of these mandates, which is pretty good. Yeah. Given that we still have 11 more years to go. But on the other hand, they don't believe that we would be able to hit the target.
Okay.
That's the bad news, I guess. 75% of the consumers said that it's unlikely that we would be able to hit it. And when we look at it, the two main reasons are, one of them is like they don't think that the charging infrastructure is going to be ready. Okay. As we've talked about in the beginning of the call, there's a lot of concern about charging infrastructure. That's number one. And number two probably would be better if we don't get into the details, but they believe that there's going to be a change in the political landscape in the next couple of years, which might have an impact on the timeline.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Interesting times, but as usual, we do this, as you mentioned, we do this survey on a yearly basis, and I'm already looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, for sure. Me too. Thank you so much for all those insights that you've shared with us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for everyone who has tuned in to today's episode. If you want to view the results of our EV consumer research study, please visit go.trader.ca/newsroom. For even more consumer insights, be sure to follow autotrader.ca on LinkedIn. Thanks again, and hope to have you join us for our next AutoTrader Carology Talks.